Hello and welcome to Military Officers Association of America's continuing series of webinars. Today's event is an interactive discussion on veteran opportunities with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Today's webinar will be recorded and MOA will send all participants a link to access the archived version on the MOA website early next week. As a reminder, you can submit your questions via the chat function and we will answer as many as possible during the question and answer portion. To assist MOA with continuous improvement efforts, please take a couple of minutes to complete the short survey at the end of the webinar presentation. I'm Brian Anderson, MOA's Senior Director for Career Transition and Member Services, and joined with Captain Aaron Stone. As many of you know, MOA's primary mission is advocacy. With members representing all 7 of the uniformed services, MOA stands strong to represent the interests of the entire military community. But we need your help, and we invite you to join MOA in this effort. MOA also believes that protecting the health, financial security, and quality of life of those currently serving and veterans of all ranks, their families, and their survivors is the foundation of a strong national defense. The MOA Military Family Initiative is a 501c3 charitable foundation, was created to help military families to meet the unique lifelong career development challenges they face. Through events and activities like this webinar today, the MOA Military Family Initiative annually connects with over 50,000 military family members in these areas of proven MOA professional expertise. You can find more information on the foundation, the MOA Scholarship Program, and to make a donation at www.moa.org/donate. Thank you for your consideration. MOA's career transition programs rival anything available in the private sector, where we deliver trusted and focused decision support to assist service members and their families with life transitions. Here's our upcoming webinar events. We encourage you to join us, all of which are open to the broader military and veteran community. Also, we would like to cordially invite each of you to attend our 2018 MOA Military and Veteran Networking Forum being held on Thursday, September 20th, 2018 at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in downtown DC. If you are thinking about transitioning to the civilian world, recently transitioned, or have been out for a while and want to meet some amazing veteran-friendly employers and resource specialists, this is one of the most unique and upscale events in the city. We literally take over the museum and give you an opportunity for 3 hours to meet world-class business leaders and entrepreneurs at a very professional venue. You can find information about these programs and more at the website link. With that short overview, it is a pleasure to welcome Lieutenant Commander and MOA member William Ashton, U.S. Navy retired. Bill was named the first permanent military veteran liaison for the United States Department of Agriculture in January 2018. In his role as liaison, he has guided USDA's efforts to support veterans to succeed through agriculture and agribusiness. Prior to joining USDA's Office of Public and Policy and Engagement, Bill served as the Security Director for Commander Naval Sea Systems Command Headquarters. Additionally, he was the Virginia Governor's appointee as the Fleet Reserve Association's representative to the Joint Leadership Council. The Council facilitates collaboration between veteran service organizations and the Department of Veteran Services to meet the needs of Virginia veterans. Bill, we are pleased to have such a renowned Navy leader and veteran advocate join us today. Over to you for the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Brian and Aaron and Christine and MOA for allowing us to what I call an education to all our listeners out there in webinar land. So I'd like to start off with a video from our secretary.
My vision for the Department of Agriculture in the United States of America is to be the best run, the best managed, the best regarded agency in this country with the best reputation. Can we do that? I believe we can. Y'all need to know I was a farmer first, and we're going to get comfortable in working clothes, okay?
get the word out about veterans and agriculture and, helping people to transition back to the real world. It's a good feeling to get recognized for our service and so forth.
Ag basically affects everybody worldwide. Without agriculture, you don't eat.
One of our main desires was to be able to raise our kids kind of the way that we grew up in a rural community. And
the skill sets that these veterans bring from their disciplines in the military are valuable assets there, and we need them in agriculture.
So as you see from the secretary, he's the real deal. As he mentions there, he was a farmer. He's also an Air Force veteran. And while he was in the Air Force, he was a veterinarian. So like I said, he really is the real deal. So in this slide here, in the upper left-hand corner is Carolina Williams, who's a U.S. Navy vet. She decided to turn her passion for juice into a career after leaving the Navy, and she enrolled in a small business administration, boots to business course, and eventually partnered with another local veteran business owner to take her business to storefronts. And that partnership provided her with a platform to begin selling juices that built her clientele and gain experience. The top right photo shows a veteran wildlife firefighter raffles that USDA Forest Service has an apprenticeship to wildland firefighters where veterans can earn while they learn. In the bottom left-hand corner is a photo of Rupert Richards, an Air Force veteran who works as the federal government employee at USDA headquarters in Washington, D.C. And this picture is Rupert speaking with the Department of Agriculture Secretary, Sonny Perdue. In the middle photo is Calvin Riggleman, who works for his family farm, which has been owned and operated for 5 generations. He deployed to Iraq in 2003 with the Marine Corps. And while deployed, his fellow Marines encouraged him to jar his farm's products. And that's when his line of products, part of Big Rigs, was born. In the far right photo is Angela Mulder, who spent 14 years in the Air Force, working in contracting and then as a medical laboratory technician. And after service, she wanted to get back into life, affirming activities, and realized she wanted to grow her own food. Now she volunteers with vets on a farm, a program with the Spokane Conservation District that helps military veterans learn more about farming and agriculture. Next slide. So some people ask the question, why veterans? Well, as you can see from here, and I won't read everything there, but there's approximately 22 million veterans in the United States, and 19% of military come from rural America. There actually is a statistic on 2015 that 42% of the people who joined the military were from rural America. And many come from rural communities and desire to return to these. And 70%, just some statistics here, 70% increase in food production is needed by 2050 to feed a growing global population. And the average age of a farmer is 58. And in order to meet the nation's food supply requirements, we need to establish a new generation of farmers. And so the bottom line here is veterans have the right stuff. You know, when you talk about transitioning and things like that, some of the basic things that are embedded into us being in the military are just taken for granted. They're actually something you can sell on the outside. You know, dependability, integrity, decision-making, leadership, adaptability, tenacity, attention to detail, discipline, and the fact that you can work as a team are just great attributes that you bring to the table when you're leaving, and why you would fit right into being a farmer. Next one. So we operate on 3 pillars at USDA, And I just want to let you know that at the end of each one of these pillars, there are some links that you can follow up on. But the first one is employment, the second one is education, the last one is entrepreneurship, and I'll take you through each one of those. So veterans with employment. So one of the goals of USDA is to have our employers, at least 25%, be veterans. And so a lot of people ask, you know, well, I'm not a farmer, because when people hear the word agriculture, it tends to be the only thing they think about. There's a lot more at USDA. And so USDA is looking for smart and experienced people who work at one of our more than 2,100 county offices throughout the country or at the headquarters here in Washington, D.C. And USDA prioritizes hiring veterans because we know that they bring a wide range of experience and strong work ethic to USDA and wants and needs across the department. And so some of the things that, the job skills that we're looking for, like criminal justice. You know, somebody said to me, oh, you got problems there? I said, no, we don't have problems at all. But people who have backgrounds in criminal justice, we also do insurance at USDA. And as you well know, any kind of insurance company, when something happens, they have to go and they have to do an investigation. So people who have backgrounds like in military police or master at arms or what other services have, they are ideal for these type of jobs because they know how to do investigations. Soil conservation technicians, contract and procurement. We do an awful lot of that at USDA. Information technology, I don't think there's a company in the United States that doesn't need people who have that type of background. Food inspection and public health. The United States Air Force and Army have military occupation specialists. We hire those people directly. They already have the training. You know, when you go to the grocery store and you see all the poultry and things like that or meat, you always see USDA inspected. These are the food inspectors. Smoke jumpers. These are the people that I say go behind enemy lines. These are the ones that go in behind the fires and work their way out. And finance. One of the things we do at USDA that some people don't know about, I would almost say the majority of people don't know about, but USDA is almost like a bank. We, in fact, give direct loans and we do guarantee loans. So obviously, if we're giving loans, you know, there's a good possibility we may want to have loan processes. So people who are in the military and have that type of background, we're looking for those. And also economics. Next. We have on-the-job training. Is also a great way to learn skills and see if a job at USDA or agribusiness would be good for you. USDA works with the Department of Labor on a number of apprenticeship programs, and these are listed here. And there's a list also at the national level programs, but there may be some regional and local levels too. And those normally can be found through the state apprenticeship agency in particular location or state that you're in. The agriculture commodity graders are people who they're in a 12-month program, they're hired, so they get paid by USDA. And they start out as a GS5/7. And what these training is all about your vegetables and fruits and things like that on either checking the size of them, actually looking at them to see if they're bruised, to see if they meet the USD stamp of approval. The wildland firefighters is a 3,000-hour on-the-job learning program throughout USDA's Forest Service, and those positions include GS3s, 4, 5s, and 5s. And then dairy grazing is not a USDA one, it's a private apprenticeship, and it includes full-time employment training and mentorship over a period of 2 years. Some of you out there may have heard about the DoD Skill Bridge and Career Skills Program. This program in a nutshell is the local commander at the installation or your CO makes an agreement with a company that has an apprenticeship program. And what DoD has allowed is up to 180 days while you're still on active duty to participate in this program. And when you see at the end of this employment section, there is actually a link to that program if you have a lot more questions with it. The Soldiers for Life are very much involved. That's an Army program that's very much involved in it. And I know the other services have them also. And that's the employment E that we talk about. And like I said, these here are the links to the majority of what I had talked about in the previous slides. So we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, education. We need to be able to fill the gaps and meet the needs of the growing population. In a study that was done by Purdue University recently, says that U.S. college graduates will find good employment opportunities if they have experience in food, agriculture, renewable and natural resources, or the environment. And between 2015 and 2020, we expect to see 56,900 average annual openings for graduates with bachelor's degrees or higher in these areas. And veterans can fill this need by getting a degree in plant science, food science, environmental, sustainable biomaterials, water resources, precision ag, and veterinarian medicine. And in the precision ag, just to kind of make a note on that, I always like to tell people, well, what really is precision ag? If you see pictures of farmlands and everything like that, what you're going to find is those rows just look perfect. And they're perfect because the tractors are almost being run by GPS. And one of the things I also tell people is I can remember, and maybe giving part of my age away, but a number of years ago, a friend of mine that was a Navy veteran went back home, and he sent me a picture of him in a tractor and all the dust coming up in his face and everything like that. Well, today, a lot of these ones that you'll see out there, they're air conditioned and they're literally being run by GPS. Drones are out there. Farmers are actually using drones now to survey their land. So that's what that precision ag is about. And veterinarian medicine. You know, we're looking for veterinarians. We hire veterinarians. I told you that the secretary himself was a veterinarian. So there's a lot of opportunities here. You can also get certificates, and there's many U.S. institutions and organizations that offer certificates in sustainable agriculture if you weren't looking to go back to school right away. And student farms. There's a number of student farms throughout that gives hands-on education through courses, internships, and special projects and research. And I'll tell you about two of them just off the top of my head. Is one here in Alexandria, which is Arcadia, which is a 12-month program. And it actually fits the bill for people who are in the military because the classes and everything are on the weekends. So you can continue to do your regular job and then on the weekends work with them. Another one is down in Texas. It's our Texas A&M Extension. And what they're doing down there, that's battleground to breaking ground. And they have a one-year program also that teaches people all about farming. And when we talk about teaching about farming, it's just not a matter of going back out there and going to the land and things like that. I will tell you that there's a lot more to it. And in getting into farming, unless your parents are giving you the land that you may be starting a farm or anything like that, but you're going to have to take loans out. And I'll talk a little later about loans. But the fact of the matter is that you are going to have to go in debt when you're doing farming, and USDA, when they give out loans, does not want anyone to fail. And when we talk about not failing, is to get some of our loans, there are requirements that you have to do to get a loan from us. And in some cases, it may be 2 years of proof that you have the experience in business and you've had some training in farming. So I just want you to be aware of that up front. And USDA has partnered with the Department of Defense and land-grant university system to enhance military family quality of life through the extension education programs and research. And you'll be able to find them There's more than 100 land-grant universities that provide a network of professional educators, trained volunteers, and local officers who can address local priority needs and extend resources or provide education of business operations and technologies. Next slide. So, some of the others that are there also is farm training and apprenticeships, which I kind of covered there, and also the extensions that USDA works with these universities. One thing I would like to bring to your attention, especially for veterans, is the Farmer Veteran Coalition. It provides direct assistance to veterans in their beginning years of farming or ranching. And when you get involved with the Farmer Veteran Coalition, they also have, you see approved by USDA on, our vegetables, our meats, and things like that. They have another one that when you're part of their coalition, it's Homegrown by Heroes, is another tag that they add there. And what they do is, as you probably know, if you're a veteran, that, you have a tendency to, while you're in the military, we are taken care of, and we have camaraderie in the military. And so what this happens here is they're pretty much throughout the United States. They're not in every state. But what it is if, you have a band of brothers and sisters out there that don't want you to fail, and anytime you have questions, they don't want you to have to go through maybe a mistake that they made in doing that. So it's a great opportunity, and just being able to call a fellow veteran and ask the question is just another great opportunity there. Next. And again, this slide here gives you the references and links to some of our ones that we talked about there. Okay, entrepreneurships. Obviously a farmer is an entrepreneur, but I want to talk a little more than just with the farmer, but we'll talk a little about farming at first here. So if you go to the next slide. So we have from farm to fork, and USDA can in fact help agriculture entrepreneurs in getting access to capital and land and help you manage your risk. And we have loans, and the first loan there is a micro loan up to $50,000 that is strictly for veterans and underserved communities. And just to kind of give you an idea of the loans that USDA has given to veterans, in 2017, USDA gave out 1,387 loans to veterans. And the amount of money that was equal to was $168,433,746. And that was strictly to veterans. And as of June 2018, we have given 1,052 loans to veterans with a combined total of $974,385. So as you can see, USDA has made a commitment to take care of veterans. The simplified loan process and paperwork, operating loans, maximum loan amount is $300,000. That's for farm and operating expenses and equipment and livestock. And then you have the farm ownership loans, and the maximum loan there is $300,000 to purchase or enlarge a farm or make improvements. Access to land. We find that that's always a question, and transition incentives program, that provides incentive payments to retired farmers or ranchers, who have land expiring out of USDA's Conservation Reserve Program to transition their land to beginning, veteran, and underserved farmers. And then enhancing land quality, helping people help the land. They provide financial and technical assistance for conservation practices to address natural resource concerns that benefit the environment. And veterans are eligible to receive a higher cost share. And crop insurance. That provides protection against the revenue decreases and the protection losses due to natural perils. Beginning farmers are eligible for incentives that discount their premiums and waive certain fees. Next slide, please. So veterans who are part of the community of the new and beginning farmers are eligible for the USDA programs to help start and continue a career there. And access to ag resources that I mentioned earlier about the capital and the land and business development. And then there's also information tailored to you by using the new Farmer Discovery tool. And that's a link you're going to get to see here shortly. But what that really does is kind of take you through a step-by-step. It'll say, what are you? You'll say, I'm a veteran. What do you want to do? I want to farm. And what do you want to farm? And on and on. And so it takes you step by step and then brings you to links that will be very helpful to you and really to help make a decision whether, you should be growing, potatoes in Florida or something like that. So, and then we also have the connect with the mentor and attend workshops and receive online resources through the USDA's partnership with SCORE. SCORE is a Service Corps of Retired Executives. And this is free to our farmers and our entrepreneurs, and these are people who just want to give back. They are successful executives who have done well in the business world, and they're willing to help you do a great job there. In this particular picture here is Josh Ellis, who is the founder and owner of Ranger Cattle, and he was a sergeant and a team leader in the Army's elite 1st Ranger Battalion, and went on hundreds of special operations missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. And his beef is currently on the menu at 5 Austin area restaurants, and also has Marcus's beef at the local farmers market. Next slide, please. So that kind of talks about, what you think would be the norm of entrepreneurship within USDA. This part here, I'll just give you a quick story. And I was out in Maine, and we were talking with veterans, and I was asking the question of who here is from rural America? And a number of people raised their hands, and I said, okay, and how many are going back home, or how many came from farms? And, a couple of hands dropped. And I said, okay, so the rest of you have obviously grew up in farming. Are you going back there? And one gentleman said, no, I'm not going back there. And I said, well, why wouldn't you go back there? He said, well, I joined the military to get away from farming. It was just too hard for me. So I said, okay, well, are you going to go back there? And he said, no, there's no jobs back there. I'm not going back there. I said, gosh, you love your family? Don't you want to go back there? He said, well, yeah, I really do want to go back there, but I told you there's no jobs for me. And I said, well, he was a Marine. I did a quick inspection from head to toe. He looked like he was in pretty good shape. I said, well, Marine, how about maybe you think about going home and opening up a CrossFit? And he gave me the look with the deers in the eyes and said, what does USDA have to do with CrossFit? And I said, we have absolutely nothing to do with CrossFit. I said, but what we do have is, if you are going back to rural America, we're here to build rural America. It is one of the tasks that, USDA has. The president had our secretary actually do a task force on rural development and prosperity. And actually veterans became a part of that on what we can do. And in rural America, we're putting out there broadband. There's a lot of places that actually doesn't have any connections to broadband, telemedicine, or some other things. So there's a lot of openings in this area here. And one of the last things here I'm just going to mention is a franchise. There's actually a vet franchise, and this is a company that, these are companies that have grown into a large network of over 650 franchise brands that voluntarily offer discounts and mentorship and training for aspiring veterans and franchises for veterans seeking employment. And that there, I actually spoke with the leader of that group, and there's nothing more that that group wants to do is to get a veteran hooked up with the franchises there. with that, you can go to the next page, and I think that it kind of covers everything. So, Brian, Aaron?
Yep, let me start with the first question we received from one of our listeners when you were talking about opportunities for veterinarians. One of our listeners asked if a person has a bachelor's degree, are there opportunities or resources offered by the USDA that would help me get to where I can be practice veterinary medicine?
That's an interesting question. I'd have to get back to that person. I don't know if we have necessarily any scholarship programs in the veterinarian world of what it seems like they're looking for. But, you know, I suspect most of the people that are coming out of the military today transitioning have their post 9/11 GI Bill that they could potentially use to get that degree.
Bill, thank you for all your truly powerful insights. I want to remind our participants to please submit your questions via the chat function, and then we'll try to make sure that we get each of your questions answered today. We also have one that's a little bit more general, and the question here is, does it matter if my military job has nothing to do with what I want to do when I transition? And what can I do to make the transition easier, particularly, as you mentioned, going back into rural America?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think some people, to be honest with you, Brian, probably afraid to ask that question. But the truth of the matter is there's the young farmers group out there that actually did a recent study, and 75% of the new farmers under the age of 30 have they're first generation farmers. So the fact that somebody asked a question and said, hey, I don't really know about that type of stuff, there's enough tools and information for you to be successful if you want to get into farming.
Bill, here's another question. More specifically, the question is, what type of background or military experience is required for becoming a soil technician? But at this point, can you also answer that generally as well, to talk about how one translates their military experience into something that's maybe in a different occupation than what they were doing in the military?
Right. And so, as I mentioned earlier there, we have a number of different skill sets that people can actually take their military experience and correlate that right over to what we do in USDA. In some of these particular ones, if you can't find it on our website, please, you can see on our slide there is a actual email address. And if we didn't get deep enough for you, please feel free to send us the email, and we will answer that question for you.
Bill, we took one specific to veterinarian medicine, asking what assistance beyond bachelor's degree does USDA have programs to support?
I believe there are some scholarship programs, and I would have to actually get back and show them those different ones that they have.
Bill, is USDA, do some of the resources that you talked about, loans and support, are they viable for hydroponic farming and other, or maybe urban farming as well?
Right. The loans are out there for farming. What you're doing in hydroponics and aquaponics and things like that are still farming. So to the best of my knowledge, they qualify for the loans also.
We had a question here that's specific to agribusiness. What are you doing to encourage veterans to get into ag other than farming? And I know you touched on it a little bit in your presentation, but do you have some additional thoughts on that one?
There's a number of avenues that people can look at. Ag business is, in fact, one of them. Actually, the University of Tennessee was in to see me recently, and they talked about some of the ag services of people. They need people there. But if you go to our website, which is the USDA.gov, and look at each one of our agencies, there's 17 different agencies under USDA. We have one agency which is involved in the foreign trade service. We have others where we actually do research. If you're a statistician and like playing with numbers, we actually have an agency that's all they do in research. So please visit our website at usda.gov, and up on the top there, it lists all the agencies, and you will see the wide variety of different skills that are needed within USDA.
Bill, can you give us some examples of the franchises that might be applicable that you mentioned earlier?
You know, the only one that comes to mind, only because I was hungry at the time, but if you go to their website that I put on there, VetFran, I believe it's vetfran.org, one of them is Burger 21. I don't think it's that big of one. I had never heard of it here in Virginia, but my one son did tell me he in fact had that, so that's one of them. But they list them right on their website.
Does USDA support veterans with their SBIR programs?
SBIR, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's probably some small business, something. Whoever put that in there, if they could tell us what the SBIR program.
Bill, are there opportunities for dietitians with military service?
Yes, we actually have a section that does nutrition. It's Food Nutrition Service, F&S, and they're one of the agencies there. They're also involved in the what some people would know at the time was food stamps, now known as SNAP. But yes, dietitians are definitely part of our team.
You talked quite a bit about different types of loans in your presentation. We took a particular question that asked a question about agricultural farms. Do those loans apply to that as well? Agriculture, I'm sorry. Agriculture.
All the loans that we have, if it's including to farming, then you obviously qualify for the loans there. One of the things I didn't mention when I talked about entrepreneurship and loans and rural development, I did mention that we do direct loans and we do guaranteed loans. We also, if you were a non-veteran, and I only say non because if you were a veteran, you may be using your GI Bill, but we also give loans to homes in rural America. So if you were looking to buy a home in what's considered rural America, and you have to go through qualifications just like you would anywhere else, we actually give loans for homes in rural America. And one of the sites, somebody may ask, well, how the heck do I know if I live in rural America or not? There's actually a link on the site there that you can type in the address. And just to be careful with that, because in some cases, you have on one side of the street, the address is not in rural America, and your neighbor across the street is. So just be aware of that.
So you mentioned, I'm going to read this question directly. You mentioned the story about coming back home to a jobless rural community. What is being done in terms of urban building, in terms of agriculture, if you can speak to that? The same can be said about coming back to a jobless urban community.
And that's a true statement. You know, like I said, one of the things that the president had tasked our secretary to do was to look at rural America in particular. But urban, yeah, you're right. We need to get jobs there too. And so I will tell you, I'm filled with stories, but when I first took this job, one of my colleagues I said to him, gosh, I guess you ought to learn more about this farming and how to bale hay and things like that. And he said, not so fast. He said, you need to look at urban farming. And in today's environment, if you look around in some cities and start looking at rooftops, you may very well see that people are actually growing things rather on their roof. The other thing that I recently found out was in New York City, people were actually renting their basements for hydroponics, and people there are actually renting the basement and growing vegetables in basements. And in Boston, they actually, the tractor trailers, people are buying them and converting them into a enclosed area to farm. So the answer to your urban, absolutely, and there is urban farming. As a matter of fact, if you go on our site to USDA.gov and go into the search area and look at, urban farming, there's actually a pamphlet out there on how to go about doing it and things like that.
We took a question regarding some of the direct placement programs that you might possibly have, and in conjunction with that, a lot of our military retirees, when they get out, are actually maybe a little bit more elderly or aging. Is it applicable to them as well?
Absolutely. A veteran is a veteran, and it doesn't matter what age they are. So if you have any questions about whether, obviously for the federal government, there's USA jobs that you can look at. But if there's anything in particular that you find in your area that you may be returning to, a job of interest, please feel free to send your resume with the questions and the job that you're looking for, and we'll see if we can help you buff up your resume if necessary to fit the bill for that particular job, or just give you some advice. And of course, if you don't know where you're going and you're just really looking for a job, and you can send us your resume, we'll try to help you with that also.
So how can I get referrals to employers who want to hire veterans or find those kinds of opportunities on my own? Maybe just in general, so the person asked, can you refer me people who are interested to businesses that want to hire veterans? Maybe in general, where does somebody find an employer who's looking to hire veterans? What would you recommend?
Wow, that's an interesting one. There used to be, and I don't know if it's still out there used to be a DOD database that people could dump their resumes in, and employees could get access to that. I know personally when I retired many moons ago, I was actually looking for a boiler technician in the western end of Pennsylvania, and like I said, DOD had that database, and it was free at the time, and I just went in and said boiler, and it pumped out some resumes of veterans. So I'm not sure.
I would also say that from our MOA transition team, we have a couple of things we would recommend. There's Department of Labor, DOL Vets is a good place to go explore their webpage, and also take part in maybe some virtual career fairs that are focused on veterans, even if you don't have any live career fairs near you. MOA has these a couple of times a year. Our next one is coming up on October 17th, so I would look for those kinds of options, because the employers who are attracted to those career fairs are clearly looking for veterans specifically.
One of our participants just defined the SBIR as being Small Business Innovation Research, and the question is, does USDA assist veterans with that particular program?
I would have to tell that person, if they would, send that question directly to us in our contact area, and we'll have to do that research on you for you.
Okay, so let's see, next question. You want to talk about the military physician?
Yeah.
We have one, I'll read it. Military physician here looking to help vets with PTSD heal and grow through opportunities in vertical farming / horticulture. Any particular resources we should be looking at, and who else can we connect with?
That's a great question, and I will tell you that I'm going to tell you probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I was introduced to a doctor who did a study, was an employee of the Veterans Administration who did a study where the study showed that agriculture can help people with PTSD. The VA just recently internally had a $4 million grant that they went out to all of their clinics and hospitals and asked them if they would like to participate in getting some of this money from the headquarters to establish agricultural type training. And so I would recommend to this person to get a hold of the VA Rural Development Group. They're the ones who are sponsoring that grant. The other thing is I thought I seen somewhere as we were going through there, somebody talking about being in voc rehab. One of the things that we are trying to do right now in partnering with the VA, and I think the VA is now realizing that agriculture is in fact something that can help our veterans when they're in the voc rehab program. And we're looking to meet telephonically with all of the rehab counselors throughout the United States to talk to them about the importance of what, agriculture can do for our veterans. And because right now I've heard a number of stories from veterans that are on voc rehab, they're involved in voc rehab, and they have said, I would like to go into agriculture, and they find it hard to get the counselor to agree to that as part of their voc rehab. And so we're going to help train the counselors with that information there. But in this particular one, I would get a hold of the VA. They're very proactive now, I believe, about getting people involved in agriculture.
Bill, you talked about a lot of the programs being open to military members and our veterans. How about our military spouses? Are they able to access and take advantage of any of the programs?
Well, that is a very important question, and I will tell you this. Obviously, USDA has loans for everyone. You don't have to be a veteran. And then there are some that, because they are a veteran, there is some preference there. Like I said, with the microloans, you have to be a veteran or a socially disadvantaged group. But I will tell you that the President recently signed out the executive order for hiring military spouses within the federal government, and USDA is very supportive of that. And when I said earlier to, I think one question was, hey, how do I apply for certain things? Military spouses can send their resume to the Contact Us website there, email, and we will also help them to gain employment in the federal government, specifically within USDA, if we can do that.
So on a smaller scale, does the USDA work with architectural landscaping or horticulture or other plant science other than big-scale farming?
I believe we do. I'm not sure on the actual architectural landscaping, but as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be a rather large farm that people are starting with. We in fact, to me, a farm is a farm, whether it's 5 acres or 1,000 acres, so you would get the same service from USDA.
We took a question from a first-year farmer, and his specific question is utilizing the Farmers Veterans Coalition a good starting point for finding a lawyer and an accountant?
That one I wouldn't be able to really comment on. I don't know what they would be looking for, a lawyer and accountant, so they can get in touch with the Farmers Veterans Coalition direct. I don't know the answer to that one.
Would underserved communities, this is a little different take on one you already answered, but would underserved communities apply to both urban areas and areas considered food deserts?
I'm not sure about the food desert ones. If the area is designated as underserved community, then I don't think it matters whether it's urban or in rural America.
We'd like to thank all of our participants out there today, and Bill, we'd like to thank you again. We really appreciate all you are doing at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we really appreciate you coming in here today and sharing your expertise. We can't thank you enough for all that you are doing to support our military members, veterans, and their families, and you truly emulate MOA's motto of never stop serving. As a reminder for all of our participants, please help us to enhance our webinar production by completing the short survey and offering your feedback. You can see some contact information on there as well today. If you need to get a hold of us here at MOA, we're at transition@moa.org, and we look forward to assisting you with your future life decisions and seeing you at the next webinar event that we'll be having coming up in August. Thank you and have a great day.